What's up, YouTube? Minnie Minchino here, and welcome back to the Minnycast. It's been a little bit, and sorry about there not being a Minnycast last week. I did not have one prepared, sadly, like I thought I was going to while I was visiting my brother, but that did not pan out as planned, so I do apologize for that. Instead, you guys got a little bit of a vlog from my trip and stuff like that, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Today, however, is going to be what I wanted to talk about before, actually, and, that was my trip to the hospital and stuff like that. Now, if you guys are kind of grossed out by needles and stuff like that, things weren't too, like, bloody or anything like that, but if that is something that bothers you, then, you may consider not wanting to, I guess, listen to this video, if that makes any sense. However, this does dealing with fears and other such things, so I guess it would be kind of ironic if you left. However, it's entirely up to you. So, for anybody who's seen my tweets and such, you know that everything ended up fine in the end. So I'm just gonna preface that by saying, like, I am fine, things ended up fine, but the ordeal itself was, well, an ordeal, I guess. So what happened exactly on, what was it, April 8th? Yeah, April 8th at around 5:15 p.m. I was just chilling out, and I just sort of felt like a very brief, like, half a second to, like, maybe 2 seconds long, like a wave of dizziness that lasted, like, barely 5 seconds, like, at most. But everything was fine up until that point. There were no headaches happening. I didn't seem to be dealing with eye strain or anything like that. Everything was fine. But after that wave of dizziness, maybe about a minute later, the vision in my right eye started to get covered up, I guess. What I was seeing, it's very, very difficult to describe, so I apologize to anybody that is confused by this, because to be honest, I'm not sure how to explain it, but the best I can think of is, like, there was, like, a sort of translucent film just sort of spreading over my eye. Like, it wasn't anything physical, that's just what looked like was happening, and it looked like it was just sort of rippling across my eye. My brother's roommate described it as a floater, because she gets things like that in her eye quite frequently, or frequently enough anyway that she'd know more about it than I do. And to me, this is the first time that happened to me, so it just kept spreading and spreading and spreading, and I had trouble reading my phone. I had trouble, like, seeing where I was going and stuff like that, and I figured I'm gonna just take it easy for a second and hope it goes away. But, you know, 10 minutes went by and it didn't. If anything, it got worse. So I finally told Candido that I was having problems, and in the end, we ended up calling my mom, who decided to take me to the hospital. And while that was happening, everything was starting to go back to normal, but it was very, very slow. It was happening very, very slowly. And I was explaining everything to the doctors and everything after waiting for, like, ever, because, you know, hospitals. And, you know, it was just kind of terrifying because I genuinely thought that I was going blind. My eye condition is degenerative. I don't know what my eye condition is, which would probably beg the question, how do you know it's degenerative? Well, I lost my left eye when I was 6 due to a cataract, and I was told that I could easily either develop another one or just something else happens, like I could lose the rest of my sight overnight. Or possibly when I'm awake, who knows? I'll have no idea when it happens until it happens. So for me, it was happening. And I was told 2 different possibilities as to what my eye condition was, and both of them are degenerative, so it's a pretty safe bet that I'm going blind one day. And to be honest, that is one of my biggest fears, is to lose that vision. Not that I can't live without vision, because I know I can adapt, and I know I can eventually, eventually learn what I need to learn in order to do what I need to do, right? It's just that fear of losing this ability that has allowed me to make videos and do what I love, and losing that is devastating to me, right? So, let's just say I was freaking out the whole night. I was trying to keep my cool and trying to stay calm, trying to stay collected and stuff like that, even while they were taking, blood samples and stuff to see if anything was going on besides my eyes that could still affect my eyes, like anything wrong with my blood vessels or my heart or anything like that. They were just kind of going through the possibilities, and they had trouble finding veins to take the blood and stuff like that, because I was in such a frazzled, that's the word I was trying to say and it came out fragile. I was in such a frazzled state that, like, it was just really difficult to find the vessels that were needed to take the blood and stuff. Eventually the blood was taken and I got sent to the X-ray department. I don't know. Hospitals are confusing. So we got guided through this maze of building and basically shoved in a corner somewhere and forgot about for a while. And then this person comes up to me telling me that the eye doctor requested that I get an injection for something. And I wasn't previously told what it was. So I was like, wait, what are you talking about? What injection? And I get told that I wasn't listening to the person that was talking to me. And I'm like, how would I know that you're talking about an injection if I'm not listening to you? I'm like, that's BS. You cannot tell me that I'm not listening to you. I was not told anything prior about an injection. And then she just sort of like, oh. I'm like, if I was supposed to, then you can go yell at who was supposed to tell me, right? But don't accuse me of not listening to you when I clearly did, right? And so eventually I was told they were waiting for approval for a contrast dye that would be injected into my veins so that the CT scan that I was going to undergo would be able to more easily see my blood vessels, and other such shenanigans. So probably about an hour later, we finally got the approval, and I go into the CT scan room place, and we got two people trying to find a proper vein for the injection. It's not like a normal blood test. You need to find like a nice wide straight vein so that the injection can just go directly through and not explode your veins, because that would just be generally not good, for obvious reasons. So it took them maybe 10-15 minutes of constantly poking me with needles. It took maybe about, they did probably about, I want to say 8 attempts total before they sent me back over to the main emergency room to get them to try. Unfortunately, their needles that they use over there are much smaller than the ones used for the x-rays and contrast dyes and stuff. So they eventually found a vein that didn't quite work. There were 14 needle holes poked in me, total. And I'm already like, I have this thing with needles. I'm terrified of them. I do not like them whatsoever. And I was sitting there like, just trying not to have a panic attack, which was very difficult and did not work in the end, kind of. So, 14 holes later, I finally have an IV in me in an improper vein, and the lady at the doing the CT scan was like, we'll try it, I guess. And she told me that she reduced the amount of the injection as much as she could to prevent the vein from rupturing. And it hurt like hell. It hurt like hell going in. Like, it burned it felt like it was burning my arm and stuff like that. But thankfully, we found out much later that the scan did actually work, so I didn't need to do it again. But in the meantime, that vein in my arm did actually rupture, so that meant some of the dye and some of my own blood just kind of went into my arm instead of staying in the vein where it was supposed to be. It didn't go everywhere, it just kind of made my arm like super swollen, near my elbow. And I was told to keep the IV in a useless vein that could not be used again. So I end up freaking out for nearly an hour trying to get a nurse's attention to check the IV, and they're like, oh, you have to keep it in case we need to run the tests again. And I'm like trying to tell them for an hour that the vein's ruptured, we can't use this IV. Like, if you're gonna do it again, you have to find another one, and I am not about to let you poke another 14 holes in me. Fuck that, I am out. Right? Thankfully my mom was there still at the time. It was probably close to 3 a.m. at this point. We got to the hospital probably about 7 p.m., so we were there for a long ass time. Finally, after my mom goes up to them, because of course they ignore the blind one, I don't mean to, like, throw that out there, but, like, it really seems to be the case sometimes, and it's honestly very frustrating. I realize that's not the case with every single person I meet, but it just really seems to be the case, especially with this hospital. It's kind of irritating, and it's aggravating. But either way, my mom finally went up to them and said, hey, you need to take this out. And they're like, well, we have to keep it in, blah, 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 same spiel. And I yelled from across the way, I'm like, this vein is ruptured. Take this out or I'm pulling it out. I was already freaking out at this time. I was trying to keep my cool, but, like, I was shaking and terrified, and I couldn't move my arm because of this IV. I had to keep my arm completely straight or the IV would, like, rupture something else. And I'm like, no, this cannot stay in my arm. I'm not okay with this. This is just, no. So eventually, a nurse finally comes over and looks at my arm and is like, oh, yeah. And Candido was there as well, and he was like, yeah. Just kind of looks at her, and I'm like, I've been trying to tell you guys for the past hour, like, you guys aren't even that busy right now. I get that they had a record high number of patients that night, but by that particular time, things had calmed down. And some of them were taking breaks on their phone. It would have taken them literally 5 seconds to look at my arm, take the IV out, and put a Band-Aid on. Like, it really wouldn't have been that much effort for them to do, so it really pisses me off that they didn't do that right away to make sure that the IV was still useful to them. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to keep an IV in a ruptured vein only to find out when you're trying to redo the scan that that's not going to work anymore. Only to then have to waste much more time waiting to get another IV in just to run the test again that might not even work anyway. Only to have more stuff injected in me that could eventually kill me if they put enough of it in there. And I'm like, no thank you. Take this crap out. I am not a fan. All of that only to find out that, they couldn't find anything. Which on one hand is a good sign, but on the other hand, I still don't quite know what caused it. It hasn't happened again since. I went to visit my brother 2 days later, and even on the train ride, everything was fine. My arm was mostly back to normal by then. I was told that it would take maybe about 2 or 3 days for the swelling to go down. Just, ice it and blah, blah, blah. Don't work it too hard until it's fine. It took maybe about 4 days for the tension in my arm to finally just, like, calm down after the swelling went down and the vein to heal. So my arm is perfectly fine. I can still see some of where they poked me with the needles. Some of the worst ones anyway. Most of them are gone. I'm surprised they're not all gone, actually. They seem to mostly be gone on my left arm, but my right arm got the worst of it. But yeah, I still don't know what caused it. So I am still facing that constant fear of either waking up with no vision or just losing it during the day. Like, I have to go to sleep knowing that the next morning I could open my eyes and still see darkness. Like, to me, that's terrifying. And I have a lot of friends and even my brother with absolutely no vision, and they're like, whatever, you can live with that. It's like, yes, I know I can, but losing something that's very important to you like that is still going to be a rough thing. And I've gotten a lot of criticism and judgment, especially from certain members of my family and friends about that. And to be honest, you guys, I'm sure that if you guys went deaf, you'd be freaking out too. You would be upset. You would be devastated too. Because, you know, if you lose the ability to, you know, if you're, for whatever reason, you just kind of go numb, like physically numb, where you can't feel anything, like you touch a smooth surface, you just can't feel nothing kind of thing. I'm sure that would be devastating too, because a lot of feedback for blind people come from audio and tactile, as well as like smell and stuff. So losing any one of those senses would be devastating to anybody. So I don't know. I'm only saying that to just cover my ass, because I've gotten people freaking out at me, going like, "Oh, you care about your vision and this, that, and the other thing." It's like, well, no, that's not all I care about, but it is important to me. It's a huge part of my life, and I am definitely gonna have a hard time if I lose it. So to be honest, it's not living blind that I'm scared of, it's losing it and having to learn to live the other way, you know, that I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that I may not be able to handle that. Now, I'll never know until it happens, but I mean, I don't want it to happen. But if it happens, I have to remember to stay strong and, you know, try to deal with it as best I can, because that's all I can do. But yeah, it's kind of a heavy thing, and you know, it always gets me a little bit emotional, because again, it's something I'm deeply afraid of, and yeah, I don't know if any of you would be comfortable with sharing stories about this kind of thing, but what are you afraid of? And do you have any stories similar to this, or something that that affected you in such a way that, like, I'm still kind of coming to grips with it, that I almost lost my vision. And it messes with me, you guys. But I think I've rambled on for quite a long time about this, and I think I'm gonna end up letting you go for today, you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, despite it being kind of a heavier episode. I apologize for that. Please feel free to check out any other series I have on this channel, as well as joining the Minchino clan on Discord if you haven't done that already. Links to that will be in the description down below. And until next time, you guys, Minny out.